Welcome back to The Price of Business. I'm your host, Kevin Price, talking to you about you and your business. Glad to be back. First live show by me for 2013 for The Price of Business. And wanted to kind of do a wrap-up of the top stories of 2012. And I couldn't think of a better person to do that with than Steve Beaman of the Beaman Group, one of the most politically astute, current events knowledgeable individuals out there, and his organization, Steve Beaman Group, is helping individuals to be empowered and businesses to be empowered on many different levels, which is why we work with him here in Texas, heading up the Texas effort and looking forward to a busy year in 2013. Steve, welcome to the program.
Well, Kevin, thanks for having me on. It's always wonderful to be with you and discuss the issues that affect so many people in the great state of Texas and around the nation.
Yeah, before we get started in our wrap-up of our review of 2012, kind of give us that overview real quickly of what the Beaman Group is all about.
Yeah, we are all about empowering folks with the financial and economic and business insights they need to build a better and more prosperous life. We today live in a transitional economy. Many, many people feel like they're being left behind, and it is our charge to empower them and educate them to help them build a prosperous life for themselves and to build their business. We know that most small business owners struggle with taxes and regulation and business processes, and we endeavor to help them build a more profitable business through better execution of strategies to deal with those things.
Yeah, very, very good. And it's on many different levels. You know, it's not just a political battle, and it's not just personal finance strategies. It's not just this or that, but really it's a kind of a multi-tiered approach, because our problems are on many different levels.
That's right. As you and I have talked so often, people need to understand there's more than money. There's emotional health. There's spiritual foundation and a nice strength there that comes with that. And so there's a lot of levels that folks need a sounding board. And we can serve as a life coach, if you will, to them. We can serve as a guiding counselor to them, much like they would hire an attorney or an architect to counsel in those areas. Our effort is to counsel them on the areas of life that need that help.
All right, really good. Let's talk about the big news stories of 2012. One of the first that obviously come to mind is the new and heated gun control debate, thanks to what transpired in Connecticut at the last couple of weeks. Instead of looking at it and accessing what people, I think the real lessons to be learned, we saw reaction. It seems like that's what government always does is reaction. You know, when any institution has a sign saying that no guns are, this is a gun-free zone, it better be guarded to the hilt with guns coming out of people's ears, because that's an invitation to a madman to come and commit violence.
Well, you're exactly right. And I think we need to be so cautious that we don't have knee-jerk reactions to tragedies that take place. And Lord knows our hearts and our prayers are with those, folks who suffered through that tragedy in Connecticut or the folks in Colorado. But the solution to that problem is not to destroy the constitutional protections that we've been granted that are unalienable and that really come with our citizenship in the United States. We can't take the Second Amendment any lighter than we take the First or Fourth or 10th. So folks who appreciate the freedom of speech and freedom of religion have to also appreciate the freedom to bear arms.
Yep, and that Second Amendment is designed to protect all the other Bill of Rights, and that's the final check against government. It really had little to do about hunting and things like that. It had to do, although obviously that is a part of it, but it really has to do with being a final check against a government that would go out of control.
That's right, and also personal self-defense. We need to be adults in the United States and take responsibility to defend ourselves and our families. And we know statistically that by virtually any measure, states that have conceal and carry, for example, have lower crime rates than places like Illinois that don't. Where you have the most stringent gun laws in Washington, D.C. or Chicago, you have the highest murder rates. So we know that restricting law-abiding citizens from owning constitutionally protected privilege is not the solution to the violence problem in America.
Yeah, my understanding is that every 2 weeks there's more deaths in Chicago than there were in that, situation in Connecticut.
So there's no
every 2
question.
weeks.
We had over 500 deaths last year attributable to gang violence. And not all of those are done with these guns. A lot of them are done with knives and things like that. In fact, we saw in China an active attack on a school by a person with a knife. So we have to look at cultural issues that drive these problems much more deeply than just restricting our belief in the fundamental rights of our Constitution.
Yep. So what about the presidential election, obviously, and really all the elections on every level? Less Republicans than in the last Congress in the U.S. House, though they kept the majority. A huge opportunity, a 2-to-1 opportunity to win the Senate for Republicans. That failed. And, of course, shockingly, Barack Obama was reelected. Or was it not so shocking? Talk a little bit about that, Steve.
Kevin, I think you and I understand that this was perhaps the most shocking election result that could have been. We understand, I think, at the national level that people went for a consistent situation, we'll say, with Barack Obama. But here's where it's surprising. In a midterm election with an economy that is anemic at best, with debts and deficits running out of control, with a continuation of the wars that we've had, it's almost inconceivable that the party in power would stay in power. And indeed, we gave more power to the Democratic Party. So I find it surprising on that level, but not surprising in that Mitt Romney was certainly not a passionate candidate. In fact, there's recent evidence that he really didn't want to run at all. So yeah. I think if you look at the candidates personally that got involved, we understand the result. But it is surprising that the American people gave 4 more years to an established governance party that really hasn't performed, and the numbers just show that.
Yep, absolutely. Talk a little bit about, what you thought were important stories of your own. Those are a couple of my own. What caught your attention?
Well, clearly the economy is near and dear to my heart. I think the biggest surprises to me in 2012 were a stock market that really couldn't be stopped. We look at the inside money, and a lot of it is buying into the stocks because they believe the Fed will continue pumping liquidity into the economy. And I think myself and many of the insiders of Wall Street thought that would come to an end in 2012, and indeed, it didn't come to an end. It expanded. So yeah. I think that is the biggest shock to me and to my brethren in the finance and economics community. But Bernanke has been consistent that he looks to keep interest rates artificially low for at least the next year, and he continues to pump liquidity into the market. So I think if you look at those issues, the gun control issue, the political landscape that we had, and the continued economic issues, you've got really the 3 major ones nailed. And those continue into 2013, and folks have to keep diligent understanding the issues that are driving our society today.
Steve Beaman's with the Beaman Group, and we have, of course, operations here in Houston as well. What other states are you in, Steve?
Pardon, Kevin, I missed that because my phone.
What other states are you developing? Obviously, Illinois and Texas. What else we got?
We're working in Georgia, Virginia, Ohio, and as we speak, I'm working on several others, which I'm finding state chairmen who can help build those communities like you're doing such a fine job down in Texas. And I welcome the folks down in Texas who look for a more prosperous and happy 2013 to join us on our mission and to really walk with us on a truly positive and optimistic and hopeful future.
Now, one of the things that's interesting, you're talking about the economy, you were talking about the fact that the stock market continued to grow. Well, precious metals restabilized. They surged a couple of years ago, then they kind of were wobbly, but they reestablished themselves over the last year. And rarely in economic history do you see precious metals and stocks growing at the same time. Do you think there's a side of particularly financial institutions who sit there and look at the economic situation, look at these artificially low interest rates, and they're concerned that the lag time between the time we really begin to see hyperinflation and the Federal Reserve response may be so great that the loss of money doesn't even make it worth it to do the loaning? Think about what's your thoughts about that?
Yeah, Kevin, you bring up a really interesting point. Right now, the United States economy is sitting on literally trillions of dollars, sitting on corporate bank accounts and in banks around the nation. Those dollars are sitting there because the businesses that control them are scared. To your point, they're looking at an economy that is anemic at best, ready to fall back into recession, and they're looking tied to that at a government now that controls the economy. If we go back 20, 30 years ago, the economy was driven by Wall Street. Today, the economy is driven by Washington. And so these businesses that control the liquidity that could reestablish our growth rates truly sit back and say in fear, what will they do to regulation? What will they do to taxation? What will those governmental actions be that affect our consumers that ultimately drive our profitability? So the banks are afraid to lend, the businesses are afraid to borrow, and that creates this really muddy environment we have.
Yeah, no question about it. Talking to Steve Beaman. Steve's with the Beaman Group. By the way, give your website real quick.
People can visit us at stevebeamangroup.org. They can also go to stevebeaman.com, and that'll get them there. And you and I are working diligently to help provide the information through our weekly insights that we provide that you put up on your sites. We also do webinars. We have audio libraries and books, and we have all kinds of tools and resources that help folks get that knowledge that they need to build a better life.
Yeah, we're hammering out a schedule for you to come down here to the great state of Texas to help business owners. When we come back after the break, let's continue our discussion on 2012, the big news stories. But let's also talk about what people should be thinking about when they're looking at 2013. Steve Beaman is my guest. He's on every week here, every Monday here on The Price of Business. We love talking to him. Delighted to have him on my very first show, live show that I'm doing for 2013. More after this.